Hey, thanks for joining me today. I have a 9-year-old son, and I have no idea what he does on the playground to get tears like this in his denim. I mean, seriously with this. 3 out of 4 of his pairs of denim had tears at the knee. 1 gaping, and 2 with the typical horizontal rip. I tried a simple mend on this one. I pushed the tear edges together and did an overstitch across the top of it. It would have held just fine, but the problem, as you can see in this jean, is that it pulled up on the hem a bit at the leg, which was no good. So I seam ripped it and started again fresh. In this new attempt, I took a patch, cut it in half, then sandwiched the denim in between the 2 layers of patch and ironed that down. For this one, I was inspired by Japanese Sashiko Denim Mending. You can get Sashiko needles, which are very long and slightly flexible. I had this nice short sharp guy handy, so I made do. I chose a basic cotton thread you can find in any grocery store mending kit, and I chose it for its color. Subtle, but still visible, and I double layered it. You can see 2 grains in the jean, a vertical one and a diagonal one. I tried to use the pencil here to make these grains more obvious for both you and myself. And then I used cross-stitch hoops to keep everything steady. I decided my design would be as easy as possible, just straight, even stitches along the vertical grain of the jean. I made some solid efforts at proper Sashiko technique with this needle that was too short, and it worked okay until I got to the patch. When I moved from one row to the next, I followed the diagonal grain of the jean to start my next stitch. I also anchored my stitches at the end of every row. My double layered patch was too thick and strong for what I'd call Sashiko weaving, so I had to just move along it 1 stitch at a time. This technique is intended to be structural first and beautiful second. Actually, Wikipedia says it translates as little stabs and is meant for the decorative and/or functional reinforcement of clothing. I, though, am just inspired by it. I moved from the table to the couch so I could watch a show with my kids and ease my aching back. You'll catch a glimpse or 2 of them as I move through the project. You can see that the patch didn't cover the entirety of the tear, but I was fine with that. When I got to the tear in my pattern, I did longer stitches and doubled them up around that tear. It ended up looking pretty cool and held up well to more rough kid recess play on the playground and through the wash. With this next jean, I put the patch on an angle to match the diagonal grain of the jean. I had a pinwheel Zentangle inspired idea in mind. There's a lot of right ways to do it, but basically you're using lines to create shapes, and then you work creatively inside those shapes, one at a time. So here's a good example of that. I created a basic pinwheel design, anchored the corners, and let one flag be longer just for the fun of it. And then each flag could hold its own design. They're all kind of different versions of each other, but that works great because it looks cohesive. My first flag was just evenly angled double lines. One side matched the diagonal grain of the jean and the other complemented it. I used really just 2 stitches. Your basic running stitch at varied lengths and what I think is called a scallop stitch, where you take an unfinished running stitch and anchor the center of it up away from the ends, making it look like a half circle or maybe like a loop. My second flag was the long flag, and I used these scallop stitches I was talking about. As I went up the flag, I had the 2 ends of a single loop fall at the top arch of the loops underneath it. My third flag, sorry it was getting later in the day, 1 line of scallops on both sides and horizontal lines connecting those scallops in between. These lines were parallel to the line of the patch. My fourth flag was the same scallop loop stitch, again, but at varied lengths, beginning at one side of the flag and ending at the other. I made sure to anchor the middle of both sides of every longer loop. I also wanted to try to indicate motion, like it was spinning, so I did 3 circles between the flags. With the third jean, I had this crazy, massive double tear to deal with. I turned my 4 patches into a lot of smaller patches to fit the tears. But then I decided to embrace the tear, and I put the patches on the back side, or the inside of the pant. Along the top tear, I made a cloud with our same scalloped or looped, or whatever you call it, stitch technique from the pinwheel. I just did this in more organic ways. I thought this would make this look totally cool and boyish to have this tear as part of the design, right? But in the end, even my son said I should have put the patches on the front so you could see the picture more clearly. And then I tried to mimic the idea of cross-hatching for shading, but instead of X's like you use for cross-hatching when you're using a pencil or graphite, I just did simple straight stitches side by side along the diagonal of the grain of the jean. I used this around the cloud, and then especially at the bottom of the cloud to try and give it some weight. I made the mountain with long back stitches, and I used my same shading technique along the right side of the mountain. We caught some rainy, overcast weather, so I tried to move to the table again for better light. It didn't last though, the couch won out. I stitched in a couple of trees. They were meant to be something like pines, but my son said everyone in his class thought they were random feathers and didn't know why they were there. And then I ended by stitching in a few birds. A very masculine, Bob Rossi, one with nature type design for my son, I thought. He liked it anyway. He likes all of them. He's such a sweet boy.